What I've got for you today is one of my favorite series of StarCraft 2 played at Home Story Cup 26. The new multiplayer balance patch at the time had been out for maybe like 3 or 4 days, and this series right here shows you everything that's new. Honestly, the entire Zerg early game has changed, and the entire mid-game follow-up for Protoss is different as well. Especially though, the man right here in the top left-hand corner, he impressed me the most. In the top left of Abyssal Reef, we have none other than Elazer. Now, Elazer hasn't been playing a whole lot of StarCraft 2 as of late. Apparently, he's been playing a lot of Stormgate, and he's been trying out a bunch of other video games. I know he's been running a lot. But he came up with some fantastic new build orders that very quickly got copied by the other Zerg players as well. His opponent, an absolute channel favorite with the red Protoss probes, we're looking at none other than Harstem's main Nexus. Now, this is not necessarily a series with phenomenal micro or the craziest macro or the most epic games, but if you're a fan of strategy and you enjoy watching the game progress and the meta take a step forward, I think this series is going to be right up your alley. After this best of 3, I also want to have a look at another series that Elazer played against Jumy. I haven't seen that one yet, so I actually was one of the commentators for this particular best of 3, so I already know what ended up going down between these two. I haven't yet seen the series that Elazer played against Jumy, so I have to have a look at that one together as well. Now, broadly speaking, here's what different for Zerg. The Queen has become 25 minerals more expensive. It doesn't sound like that much, but it really changes the early game drastically. Zerg can't really rely as easily on Queens anymore to stay, for example, safe against Oracles, or to just, well, macro up and deal with any of the early game aggression from Protoss. So what Elazer ended up going for, also in Zerg vs Terran, were builds that just revolved around 3 to 4 Queens. That's it. He would just make 3 to 4 Queens. Now, in contrast to what we normally see, most of the time in a Zerg vs Terran, for example, Zerg players will go up to 8 or sometimes even 9 Queens. That is the norm. Making only 3 is ridiculous. The advantage of it is that you can very quickly spend a lot of your larvae on drones. You can very quickly saturate 3 bases. You can very rapidly go up to, for example, a lair as well. And that's exactly what Elazer does. So Elazer mentioned in one of the interviews that I got to do with him that he hasn't really been playing a whole lot of ladder, but because of playing these other RTS games, like for example Stormgate, he's been putting in a lot of work and a lot of thinking about scouting and tech transitions, and it sort of shifted his mindset a little bit. And we could certainly tell that, yeah, he had a different approach from all of the other Zerg players. Now, on the flip side for Protoss, one of the builds, of course, that Protoss can now go for a little bit more comfortably is a 3-base Tempest strat. And that's exactly what Harstem decided to go for here in the first game of the series. He decides to go for a very quick third and then rush into Tempests. Now, low Queen builds and Tempest strategies like the ones that Harstem is going to go for here. He starts off with a Void Ray, but we will be seeing that leverage its way into a third here eventually, and then he's going to go into Tempest. Those were the strategies that we saw in StarCraft 2 in maybe like 2015, 2016 or so. It's been a very long time. So small changes, a couple of numbers here, a couple more minerals there. It really has adjusted the meta in StarCraft 2 drastically, as well, especially Zerg players need to reinvent some of the strats that they're going for against Protoss, because Protoss now has quite a few options at their disposal. So behind, of course, the Tempest, you can also go into a Mothership. The Mothership is also significantly better now that Zerg can't really abduct it anymore, and you don't really have any, like, easy tools to get rid of the Mothership. It really needs to be respected. The Mothership itself also just seems to deal a tremendous amount of damage all on its own. So it's a lot of new plays that have only really been going on for maybe about a week or so ago. So, or a week or so in total. So this is basically all of the changes in the meta so far, all wrapped up in one neat little series. So there it is, by the way. Super quick lair. This is significantly faster than what we normally see. Notice the droning here as well from Elazer. So he did make a round of Zerglings to try and put in a little bit of work on the other side of the map. There's already a 4.5-minute fleet beacon. That's ridiculously fast. You would never see that in the previous patch. We have 3 Queens in total. That's it. Extra gas is coming up right now. We have 1 Creep Tumor. Now, I think actually, if you're gonna go up against a Zerg player who's only gonna go, you need to snipe. You need to throw up a Revelation here and snipe that Creep Tumor. Normally, it's not really worth the energy of an Oracle, because Zerg has many queens ready to go ahead and replace any of the creep tumors. But I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the strategies are going to revolve around denying that creep threat ASAP. So one thing Elazer has been doing, he's scouting right now with an Overlord. From what I understand, this is something that Lambo mentioned. If he doesn't get the scout, he does something that we never see for Zerg. He goes for a Spire and a Hydra Den at the same time. Since in this particular instance, Elazer scouts that it's a second Stargate together with a Fleet Beacon, he knows he doesn't need the Hydra Den, but apparently in a lot of the other games, and I'm hoping we're going to see that in the other series against Jumy, he apparently goes for both a Spire as well as a Hydralisk Den simultaneously, which is kind of weird as well, not something we normally see. One of the advantages of going into a much quicker lair like this is that you don't really need to Roach Warren so quickly. It's an interesting style, right? Like, you don't really need to hang out so long on any of, like, your Roach tech. You can just transition towards quick Hydras instead. And it shifts the entire meta very drastically. Now, we do have a quick 4th base coming up, too. This is going to be connecting the 3rd and the natural expansion here. Elazer going for the horizontal expo, which is quite notable here. Because rather than taking this as his... well, 3rd base, or maybe this one over here as his 3rd base, he decided to go for the one all the way out here. That is something that we used to see back in the day, but notice the lack of creep spread, right? Like, he's only got one tumor going right now. This is very different than what we normally have. Harstem at this point in the game does not yet know about the transition towards such a quick Spire. So this is essentially the fastest possible Spire you will ever see from a Zerg player. 6.5 minutes into the game, Corruptors are already coming up. That is like a good 5 minutes minimum earlier than per usual. Now, even though these are the fastest possible Corruptors in the game, the Tempests, together with the Void Ray, are still going to be able to deny the base. Very difficult for Zerg to hold on to that one, but Harstem needs to be able to recall immediately as soon as he sees the Corruptors. I think he may have just... I think he just must have had a glimpse of it. Yeah, he decides to recall, because these units are so critical for the Protoss player to keep alive. This is still dangerous though, right? So imagine if there weren't any Stargate units, he could have gone into Hydralisk instead. The Corruptors are super dangerous against these Skytles troops, and he's going to be able to pick them off with relative ease. Now the Zerglings are running in as well. And this is so different than what we normally see in Zerg versus Protoss and what we have been seeing in the ZVP matchup over the course of, like, the last, I don't know, like the last 3, 4, sometimes 5 years, I guess? Like, we've been seeing, I guess we had the double Stargate Void Ray meta for some time as well. This is now Harstem getting overwhelmed by Ravager Ling Corruptor at minute 8 in the game. He actually all-army hotkeyed away. I think those Corruptors could have used that caustic spray ability to kill the Nexus itself, but just look at this game. This is weird. We have the Protoss player going for a 3-base Stargate rush, right? Effectively going straight towards Skytles. I know this has become a very popular build on the ladder. I've had quite a few people that are, say, for example, like a Diamond League Zerg who are really struggling against Protoss because they can't figure out a way to shut down the Skytles ball before it lays eggs. And this is Elazer. Like, what I like about it, he's not really going for a hard counter so much. It's not like he's doing this blindly. He would have gone into Hydras instead if he, well, saw that his opponent decided to go for maybe like a Blink follow-up instead. But he came up with the perfect counter, and he absolutely dismantles Protoss. Game number 2. We find ourselves on Amy Gadala, or Amygdala, however you want to call it. I don't actually remember this particular map as clearly as the first one, but I remember sitting there as one of the casters, and I had Lambo explain the build order that Elazer was going for, and it blew my mind. I know objectively, if you just look at the game, it was just a rush with a couple Corruptors, and, you know, Protoss decided to go for a Skytles build. Look, that was very different. That was Harstem trying to play a very cheeky build of his own, but then his opponent decided to be even cheekier. There was a lot of scouting there from the Zerg player. He figured out what he needed to go for, and he managed to get the job done. What's really interesting to me, though, is mostly the amount of queens. So, only 3 queens is very weird. Like, I just want to really reiterate, right? How strange that is. The queen, in my mind, is by far the best Zerg unit in the entire game. It makes sense that it got a little bit of a nerf, because it's been pretty overwhelming, but I've been thinking about it, right? Like, I've been thinking about what the best strategies for Zerg could be, and most of the time, what everybody seems to come up with would be like a Ravager Queen rush. Or some sort of all-in where they can shut down the Protoss player before you get to that late game. That's the current strategies that we see a lot. We see a lot of aggression from the Zerg player before Protoss can properly make that late game transition, right? So Protoss would go up to, like, say, like a Blink Stalker push, and they would try to then transition towards a Mama ship and a bunch of carriers and all that. We see most of the Zerg strategies, in the current meta at least, what most of the players decided to go for at Home Story Cup, they would try to shut down those builds from the Protoss before they could really lay eggs. And Elazer, well, effectively does the same thing, but substantially earlier on in the game than what we normally would be seeing. And I think he's really onto something here. I know he's been going for quick, lairs and low queen counts against Terran as well. I haven't really had an in-depth look yet at those builds, but I do want to go ahead and have a look at those as well over the next couple of days. So if you aren't already subscribed, do make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get notified as soon as future videos go live. And while you're at it, please do me a favor. Hit the like button down below. It really does help. It's these little things, man, that make StarCraft 2 so exciting to me. Like, I know a lot of people complain that sometimes StarCraft 2 is very much so a game of fast mechanics, right? It's not so much a strategy game, but it's a game about who can, well, play a cleaner match by being super fast and, well, also very intelligent, right? But this is very much so both players playing a strategy game, right? They're trying to outsmart the opponent with tech choices, and they're trying their very best to just stay one step ahead of the opponent. And so far in that first game, at the very least, Elazer had a very clear path ahead of him, and I love that strat. I think it's very cool. I haven't yet given it a try myself, but it does get me excited to go back onto the ladder. Alright, so there's queen number 3 coming up. So it's a heavy... So one of the things that Elazer said that really blew my mind is he said creep spread is overrated. Like, in my mind, right? Maybe I'm just an ignorant Zerg player, as we want more of a Void Ray build. But in my mind, creep spread is like the most powerful mechanic in all of StarCraft 2. Because it grants movement speed, vision, which is just insane. Like, those are probably the strongest things you can have in a game. And then he also says the queen is, yeah, probably a little bit overrated too. Which, in my mind, is the very best Zerg unit in the entire game. Curious how that works out. Anyways, we'll have to see whether or not this will actually become the standard for Zerg. But if it does turn out to be something that all the top-level Zergs are going to be playing over the next couple months, I wouldn't be surprised if this is the first time that it properly happened. Okay, so Spore Crawler coming up. Here again, 4-minute lair. That's like a solid minute earlier than per usual. We only have 3 queens, and since he's not spending minerals on queens, he is just pumping out drones. Look at the worker count here. We're already going up to 50 drones. Protoss is rapidly chrono boosting here, okay? Like, he's trying to get his worker count to be as quick as possible. Now look, this is a different follow-up than what we saw from Harstem in the first game. This is not him going into Quick Tempest. Plus, he's actually using that Void Ray to deny the scouting overlord. So this is a situation where Elazer does not know what he's playing against. He does not know what the follow-up from Protoss is going to be. This is something that we've seen time and time again. So it's Blink together with the +1. +1 will be starting up momentarily. There it is. And then we're going to go into the good old Blinky boys. How are we going to go for a lair this time around? Well, he does decide to go for a Baneling Nest. I don't know if that was a response to losing the Overlord or because he's a little bit worried about it. I know that he cancels it. Okay, he cancels it and goes for a Hydra then. I know that sometimes adept follow-ups can be quite terrifying, so this is him effectively rushing out a Hydralisk den instead. Look at the worker count already though. 5 minutes in, Zerg is fully saturated on 3 bases. Now Harstem's expansion here was super quick as well, so Harstem is going to be able to catch up economically relatively easily. But this is a relatively standard build here from Protoss, right? Like, this is essentially what we've been seeing over the last couple of years, time and time again. And look at this. We're going Hydra and Spire at the same time. Now, once upon a time, I remember the pro gamers making fun of me for going Hydra Corruptor. Once upon a time, I remember the day. Okay, it still stinks. It turns out I have basically been 5 years ahead of the meta, guys. I don't want to flex or anything, but I may have accidentally been... No, but seriously, it seems to be what a lot of Zerg players are currently doing. I was you know, busy being bad at the game, but I accidentally stumbled upon something that may have not been atrocious. Now, this is still a scary push, though. But because Elazer has had such a booming economy very early on, he's felt like he can skip the Baneling Nest, he can skip the Roach Warren, and he can even afford adding in a Spire, all whilst holding here against what the Stalker aggression is going to be like. Now, he does need to make a lot of units, though. Yeah, he does decide to add on additional Hydralisks here. It's not like he can be saving up to make a whole lot of Mutas in one go, because he would probably just straight up lose. But that was a clean and easy hold right there for Elazer. Now, where do we take this game from here? It's going to be Storm on the back of this for Harstem. 4 additional gateways on the back of this as well for Harstem. We have the +2 in the Forge researching. Okay. This is something, though, right? So this is what happens sometimes in StarCraft patch. Or in a StarCraft 2 patch. This is something that Elazer could have done in the previous patch. There was nothing that would stop him from doing this. As a matter of fact, it would have been slightly better in the previous patch. But sometimes in StarCraft, and I've noticed this several times before, something needs to be nerfed for players to realize that other strategies are viable. That's the beautiful thing, I guess, about strategy games. Even if you do nothing, new builds will still be invented. But this is something that Elazer could have been doing all this time, but nobody did. So I think, by the way, Elazer is feeling, okay, he does decide to go into a bunch of Mutas right now, that maybe he can actually finish the job here with these Hydras and Zerglings alone. It's a very risky push. No Hive, a very late 4th base, no more workers after the initial batch that he made as quickly as possible, and he's just going in right now to overwhelm the Stalker numbers. In the meantime, 10 Mutas are producing. I mean, he's forcing the Protoss player to warp in a bunch of Zealots and stuff, which is really just a desperation play. As soon as those Mutas show up, which is going to be right about right now, you can see that the execution is actually a little bit sloppy here from Elazer. I don't think you're supposed to show those to the Protoss player. I think Harstem must have had a glimpse of it, but there's really not much here that Harstem can easily do about those Mutalisks. More units for the Zerg are moving towards the bottom right, and now he's certainly seen them. Those workers are going to have to run for their lives. He does aggressively blink in here, but that would mean that the Hydras and the Zerglings can also move into the 3rd. Yeah. So you know what? Maybe making all those queens in the early game, while it does keep you nice and safe, maybe it is not the way to go. Maybe it's better to just hang out and not focus so much on creep spread, but just inject your bases, send in the drones, and go. Okay, so our next best of 3 series, this is one I haven't seen yet. It's going up against a player called Jumy. Now, I believe I have featured Jumy before in the past. He's a high-ranking Protoss player on the European server. He's been improving quite a bit as well over the last couple of years, but we'll have to see how prepared he is against Elazer's fresh shenanigans. That pylon feels very far forward, but maybe he wants to wall on that side? Not exactly sure. So it seems to me, I've been thinking about the strategy from Elazer quite a bit over the last couple of days. This was played on Saturday, so the 2nd day of Home Story Cup. It seems to me that the reason this is good is because Zerg is very strong in the mid game. In the past, a lot of Zerg players were quite fond of playing late game. Right? They didn't mind playing the late game, but it seems like overall, late game is a little bit better now for Protoss across the board. And this is effectively Elazer just skipping the early game and preventing the game from ever going the distance, right? Like, that is the goal. He's very focused on using that mid-game aggression to his advantage, and he's trying to get to that mid-game as quickly as possible. Just get up towards the lair, build up the 3-base economy, and then go, go, go. Very neat. Now, I'm not exactly sure what Jumy's tendencies currently are in this matchup, so we'll have to figure it out. I would imagine it's going to be a Stargate-based build. It's going to be a Nexus on the low ground for now, though. Cybercore at 20 supply as well. Cutting 1 probe here. Now we'll get back to worker production eventually. Oh, it's lagging for you too. Yeah, this is sadly one of the things that we did have to deal with this particular Home Story Cup. There were a lot of networking issues. And I'm not sure exactly if it affects this particular series. I know that by day 3, most of the problems were resolved. From what I understand, basically the... it's a feature, yeah. From what I understand, German internet did not want to cooperate. Yeah. It happens sometimes, you know? Like, you can run a perfect tournament, but if your ISP decides to, not do what you needed to do, you hate to see it. I know they have, like, multiple internet lines and they tried a lot of different stuff. But ultimately, if the internet service provider decides to not, do what you needed to do, it is really tricky. So once more, it's nice actually that we see Elazer playing on the same map again, just like what we saw against Harstem. Once more, he goes for the horizontal expansion. The line expansion, as the pro gamers usually call it. I don't like line. Line sounds lame. But anyways, it could either be like, I guess, vertical or horizontal. He once more decides to skip this one over here, and also skip this one right over there. This is what we used to do back in the early days of StarCraft, but I'm not sure exactly if this is actually the go-to in 2024, because this feels like it's miles away from the natural, like it's such a long distance. Anyways, second gateway coming up. It's straight Oracle here for Jumy. Pylon? Yep. And I will probably see a third base coming up at about 350. Again? Oh, this is neat, by the way. This is something that we also, when this map was first around way long ago, this is something Zerg players figured out after a while. If you put down a creep tumor in this specific corner of the natural, the creep will actually spread to right about over here. It doesn't feel very intuitive to place the creep tumor over there, but you can actually spread it from here across that little crevice. It feels a bit cursed, but yeah, you can see how it actually spreads far enough. So that's probably why Elazer is fond of going for that base over there. Neat little play. Drones are going to transfer because he's actually oversaturated. So this is effectively the rule of one gas, but then off of 3 bases. So just one gas geyser, full mineral saturation, everything goes onto minerals, spore crawlers for defense, and just triple queen. 4-minute lair. Yeah. What a build. Now, there's no Overlord hiding over here this time around. Yeah, we have an Overlord instead in the back. Okay. That may have actually been where it was last time against Harstem too. So very similar. Elazer is going to get the full scout, and he will see that this is not going to be a Skytos follow-up, but instead it's going to be a Twilight Council-based build. So I would imagine we're once more going to go Hydra then, and then maybe a delayed Spire? I almost feel like I'm spoiling Elazer's surprises here, man. Analyzing this type of strategy. Next time around Protoss plays against something that looks like this, they will be a lot more prepared, it seems. But this is a cool thing, right? Sometimes you can show up at a StarCraft tournament and you've come up with something that nobody else has thought of yet. It doesn't take long, of course, for everybody to catch a wind of these sort of builds, but there it is. 5-minute Hydra then. Like, this is substantially earlier than a normal Hydra then. Okay, now this is curious. I wonder how well it does against this particular follow-up. I don't know, by the way, if Elazer wins this series. I have no idea. It's gonna be a Hydra then together with a Nidus network. And in the meantime, on the other side... Oh, Jumy went for charge first, but then decided better of it. He canceled charge and went into blink. Instead, he's going second Robo together with Robo Bay. I was wondering what he was doing here with charge, because charge into Colossus doesn't make a lot of sense. Stalkers with blink into Colossus does make a lot of sense. And you would imagine that Stalker Colossus destroys Hydras. Hydra Ling, generally speaking, just melts to Colossi. So this is the right counter for Jumy, but I'm not exactly sure, if it's in time, because the Hydras are already on their way. These are, by the way, Hydras that will only ever have their ranged upgrade. Muscular Augments is gonna be ignored. I mean, you'll probably get it, but this is, again, a little bit strange. Generally speaking, the rule for Hydralisks is to not play Hydralisk until both upgrades are done. Yeah, he's coming in hard right now. Colossi are indeed on the horizon. In the meantime, we have another one of those Nidus networks inside of the main base. I think this strategy is going to stun Protosses for a while, man. Like, this is something that we haven't seen Not at least since, like, early Legacy of the Void, late Heart of the Swarm. GG. Okay, next up, we find ourselves on Whispers of Gold. It's kind of funny, I was actually reading my YouTube comments this morning. And I saw a couple people, like, obviously I don't upload every single, you know, game that's being played at the highest level, right? I try to cover the best games of StarCraft, but I can't possibly be casting everything, because there's a lot of games always being played. But I did see a couple of comments of people asking, like, hey, does Zerg ever still win at the highest level against Protoss? Like, does it still happen? And I was looking at the latest uploads that I've done, and it does seem to be a lot of Protoss wins in PvZ over the last couple of weeks, but... Okay, this is a 15 hatch opener from Elazer, going up against what seems to be Proxy 2-gate from Protoss. Huh. You can see this sort of thing happening, by the way, at tournaments like Home Story Cup. Like, you can literally see the pro gamers talking to each other, and... Oh, wow, Forge on the back of this too. Jeez. They're literally talking about strategies and figuring out the game together. It's one of the beautiful things about strategy games, right? Like, yes, sometimes it can feel nice to just play the game from home and try your very best to figure it out, but collective information really is king. Jumy pretending like this is a normal probe scout, but he decides to put down a pylon right outside of the vision range that are off that building hatch. He can go for an easy kill right over here on the base. Zealots. And one photon cannon. I mean, that hatchery is so dead. Like, this is the most dead hatchery that has ever existed. Yeah. The norm for a long time in StarCraft 2 was to send your second Overlord, so the first one you make, to the low ground. Council. I think you council, no? Yeah. You usually send it down to the low ground to scout for this sort of thing. Apparently with a 15 hatch, a drone actually arrives in time. Spine crawlers are coming up. Very quick roach warren. Here's the zealots, though, marching into the main base. They're gonna have to, yeah, go after the spines one at a time. Another one of those spines is hiding. He's using the speed of those zealots against the zealots right now. This is very committed, though, for Jumy, right? Like, it's not like he can just hang out here and... Oh, nice little bit of drone drilling. He needs to deal critical amounts of damage with this, and this is not critical. As a matter of fact, yeah, I think you can... Yeah, cancel them. One spine is going to hold this. Couple roaches, easy peasy. So we're actually going to have to see a transition now for Jumy. He needs to do... Yeah, he needs to do something new. Great defense there by Elazer. Still, though, it's not over yet. This is a cheeky little soft contain. I would imagine Elazer is gonna go quick Ravagers on the back of this to break out and then potentially go across the map. Meaning that Jumy has to go Stargate. He'll probably go Stargate and then into a base. Like a Nexus on the low ground. Should be a Stargate. Yep. Leaving a little bit of space over here. Nexus on the low ground. You need to do this as Protoss, because otherwise you die to the roaches. You don't really have an alternative. It's gonna take a minute or so, though, until Elazer is free. Yeah. You should probably also shut down the gateways over here. He doesn't know yet, I don't think. Oh, actually, no, he did see it with the drone. Yeah, he does know where this is built. So you have to go Void right here as Jumy. Nexus is quite late, actually. I think he's been trying to afford it, but can't really get the job done. He's a little bit afraid of these units marching across. Natural expansion starts back up. Now, where do we take this game from here? Do we still try to make this a normal match? I do like this, by the way, for Jumy, trying to see if he could sneak these units around. Couple of Adepts here as well, trying to see if they can get some work in. Okay, this could be huge. Yep, just start poking all of those drones to death. Maximizing damage here is huge. I think he should get another 2 drones. Alright. 4 workers is not bad, though. In the meantime, of course, the Void Ray is out. Oracle on the back of this. 4-minute lair. It's a pretty quick lair. Supply-wise, of course, Zerg is ahead from this position, but I don't I don't mind this for Zerg, but I wouldn't call this an overwhelming advantage. This has just really made the game a lot more complex for the both of them. Void Ray is going to show up. These structures are painful to lose, right? I think you're going to lose them regardless in the end. Nice targeting right here with that Void. Trying to make sure that the Ravager goes down. Honestly, if you can get the hatchery, that'd be huge. Obviously, if you go for such a quick lair, it means that you're not going to make another queen. I think you activate the thick beam, dude. Make the beam thick! And I know the Spore Crawler is coming. Now we make the beam thick. Apparently we did have one Ravager getting adventurous on the other side of the map. It's gonna cost him dearly. His legs are still wiggling. Okay, Lair is now done. 2 queens start up. That means we do go into 3 queens here eventually. Yeah, Elazer is being run around in circles right now. Oh, movement on the Oracle. Okay, good control. Keep in mind that Spore Crawlers, by the way, deal significantly more damage now in the new patch. But they have 100 HP less. So they only have 300 hit points. Which is not that much. Ultimately, though, Elazer is buying an awful lot of time. And I think Queens will be able to push this back. The Spore Crawlers are also good, actually. Don't underestimate the Spores here. Yeah, in the past, those Spore Crawlers would have been Queens. Oh, he accidentally balled his own Ravager. Those Spores really do need to be respected. Yeah. What a game. What a game. Yeah, that's overly ambitious. Hydra then comes up. So Elazer is still trying to guide this game back into what he had originally planned. This is a very shaky way of getting there. But he's on his way. We're gonna arrive on our destination, or at our destination eventually. Jumy goes for a 3rd Nexus. It's ambitious, I'll give him that. I wonder if it's a little too much. I think if you're playing 2 base versus 2 base, you're pretty happy as Protoss. Trying to be a full base up against Zerg when losing a Void and an Oracle like that, in addition to the one you already lost, that is very greedy. I wonder if it's gonna be something he regrets here, because those units are super critical. This is looking to me like Elazer is gonna go 2 base Hydras. 2 base Hydra, shut down these structures. I like, by the way, that he made another pylon over here. He must have brought in a probe. 2 base Hydra. And maybe even ignore the 3rd. Maybe just run straight to the natural. Obviously, as time goes by, Jumy is going to feel better and better. Keep in mind that there's no more shield battery overcharge. It's crazy, by the way. Like, there seems to be a bit of a disconnect. I've seen a lot of people complain that the removal of shield battery and the addition of energy overcharge is a nerf for Protoss. Trust me, guys, I've seen a lot of games of CVP now. In this matchup, especially, energy overcharge is so much better than shield battery overcharge. It's not even close. The main problem is that you do need to be good at the game. Like, for good players, energy overcharge is substantially better. I thought initially, too, that it wasn't going to be that great. But it really does seem to be much better if you use the oracles effectively and you don't lose them. You can get so much time. Now, by the way, there's once more a Nidus network. There's a cheeky little Zergling. Notice, by the way, no Zergling speed. This is a theme in pretty much all the Zerg matchups lately. No link speed. Like, it's weird, man. Like, this all used to be the gold standard. You would pretty much always go into Zergling speed as your very first upgrade. And we have been seeing link speed. But it's not nearly as much a focus. And it's all because the hatchery is 25 minerals cheaper and the queen is 25 minerals more expensive. That's really the majority of it. Now, charge is done. Is there enough for Jumy to defend? I'm assuming the queens and the hydras are gonna come in. Another oracle gets all army hotkeys in here too. Yeah, this is not enough for Protoss, is it? Is it? Yeah, those immortals are quite nice. Yeah, those charge lots are also good. In the meantime, a new Hydra then is building, or a new Lurker, what's it called? Nidus Worm is building inside of the main base. One Zealots gets, yeah, I think he needed those additional oracles. If he had the additional oracles here, together with the Void Ray, he could easily hold this. I think he can still hold this. But this has been costly. In the meantime, a third hatchery was built. Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I love watching this type of StarCraft. I'm a big fan of watching, like, the Serral versus Max Packs type of strats, where they're both just mechanically ridiculously good, and you wonder what even is the purpose of playing the game. Did we bring a sentry to Force Field? Yeah. This absolute chaos and an actual strategy game being played, it is really neat. Now, I think we should have protected that sentry, though. That sentry needed a little bit more love. In the meantime, the Hydras and the Queens and the slow Zerglings. The slow Zerglings, man. They're inside of the main base of Protoss. And while Protoss is inside of the main base of Zerg, those slow lings are still not bad. We're bringing a Hydra... Yeah, we're bringing our Hydra group, I guess, back again from the main base of Protoss. Because he could Nidus his way back home. At this point, I'm not sure that he needs it, to be honest. I think he just sent in the rest of the troops, too. He's Nidusing his own main base to get units in a little bit quicker if he needs to, or at least to be able to retreat back home. Purposefully not sending everything, though. He's assuming that there might be that Prism. Prism has decided to go towards the third instead. Yeah, and this is not going anywhere for Jumy anymore. He decided to wrestle in the mud, but Elazer has been wrestling there for a hell of a lot longer than Jumy. GG gets cold. Elazer obtains another 2-0 win. What a cool build. I really like this. I wonder if it's going to be the new standard. Guess we'll have to find out.